Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Pole BMX, a podcast. We haven't done one of these in so long, and we've just been lacking / just gearing up for the Olympics. It's been a crazy year so far. We had a huge year of racing BMX here in the U.S., but obviously those racers and the people competing for those Olympic spots have been traveling the world, gearing up for Paris 2024. So this is a preview podcast. We got Connor Fields coming in strong with that breakdown of the U.S. riders, the international field, his role with the NBC Olympics and being on the mic for racing and freestyle. We'll talk to him about that. We'll talk to him about the full preview, everything Connor loves to do. So we're just stoked. Can't wait for you to hear it. As always, keep an eye on polebmx.com and all of our social media at polebmx to keep up to date with the Olympics and everything BMX across the world.
Bring him back. KG out here. We don't answer whole shot.
Connor Fields, 2016 gold medalist, three-time national number one USA BMX, AA pro, men pro, whatever it is. Connor, I mean, we have a big week ahead of us. We've had a big 2 years, but now it's come down to it. We got the Olympics going on.
Yeah. You know, it is weird for me, right? This is the first time in my adult life where this period is not filled with anxiety and nerves and stress. But honestly, I'm just excited to watch it as a fan and to be able to enjoy to the highest level of BMX action that there is.
Yeah, definitely. While you're not going to be on the track, you are going to be there and be on the mic for racing and freestyle. It's going to be great to hear your voice over the broadcast. But how'd that kind of come about before we jump into the racing?
Yeah, obviously when I announced my retirement 2 years ago now, immediately I knew that I wanted to continue to be involved within the sport. And, a lot of things happened that allowed me to do that, working with USA BMX now, still involved doing clinics and coaching, things like that. But, as we got towards the Olympics, I called my agent and I said, hey, I'd love to commentate the Olympics. How does that work? And he, asked around, made some calls, and we figured out, the right people to talk to. And then I had to audition. I wasn't the only one that was interested in doing this. I auditioned, and, I think it probably helps having an Olympic gold medal in the back pocket. But I auditioned, I got the gig, and then we've been rehearsing for the past month, calling old races, calling Tokyo, calling Rio, calling the Tokyo freestyle competition, and just getting ready for it.
That's awesome. Well, we've already had a lot of racing and freestyle action go down this past 2 years. The most recent one, though, that World Championships, you were in attendance to watch all the action. We had Elise taking home the gold, Delaney taking home the bronze. The U.S. guys, they weren't too lucky, but they were still putting their wheel into the pack and staying with it. Unfortunately, some wrecks got them out for that main event. But in terms of looking towards the Paris Olympics, what did you take away from the World Championship?
So I think there's a couple things you have to remember here, right? First off, just because you did well or you didn't do well at the World Championships, that doesn't necessarily mean anything for the Olympics, right? So if you look at past history, Joris won the World Championships in 2016. So he entered the Rio Olympic Games as the world champion, and he didn't make it past motos. So there's no real direct correlation. While at the same time, in 2008, Maris won the World Championships and the Olympics in the same year. So, you can see it go both ways. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. However, you do want to have a good result at the World Championships, builds confidence, shows your good form, and then that helps you go into the Olympics with some confidence. But with that being said, Elise and Joris are both 33 years old. They've been at this for a very long time. They're not the types that are going to be massively affected by a good event or a bad event. They've been through it all. They're both coming up on their fourth Olympic Games. So no matter how they would have done at the Worlds, I would have expected them to be, my top three favorites for their classes. But I think it's going to have a huge effect on somebody like Delaney, who had never reached an international podium. And then she gets her first one at the World Championships in an Olympic year, which is huge. So not only did that seal her position on the team, but she's going to go into Paris now knowing that she belongs. And you always, when you're an athlete and you're young and you're coming up, you think you can do it. You think you can, but once you do it, then you know. And then there's a shift in that confidence that you know. So I think it's going to, help somebody like Delaney a lot. And then also don't forget, Felicia got fourth. We had 3 women in the top 4. And Felicia got 4th at the World. She got 4th at the Olympics last time. So she's tired of getting 4th. I think she's going to want to bump that up at least one position. But then as far as, with the men, both Cams were going fast and their form was on. They both got unlucky in different ways. Larson clipped his pedal in a turn, kind of a freak accident. And then Cam Wood just got tangled up with another rider. So, both of them could leave that race, although they would be frustrated. Both of them could leave that race and say, well, I was going fast enough to contend. So I just have to keep doing what I'm doing and try to avoid the unlucky situations or the mistakes, whatever you want to call it, in Paris.
Definitely. Obviously Elise and Delaney, clinched their spot with those podiums. But the other 3 riders on the team really went through a grueling qualification process. When you were a rider, how stressful was that? Not only racing at those races leading up to the Olympics, but knowing that, okay, my score here is going to affect the country's points on, who are we taking? How many are we taking? Take us through that from a rider standpoint.
It's a super weird, unique position because you're rooting for your teammates, but not really. You want them to do good, just not better than you.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's this weird kind of in-between position. And I remember, for me, I was always battling with Corbin Schirra through a couple Olympic cycles, Nick Long through 1 or 2 of them. And, so I would be in the gate in my quarterfinal, and I'd be trying to focus on what I was doing, but one eye would kind of be glancing at the track to see if they were going to make it through, and I have memories of being in the gate in semis, and maybe I'm in semi 2 and I see, Corbin or David Herman or one of the guys I'm competing against, they make it. And then I'm in the gate thinking, oh, all right, well, they made it. I better make it now.
Right.
So, it's a race kind of within a race. Right. And a good example of that is the French at the Worlds, right? That race kind of dictated who their third guy would be. So there's a race within the race. But with that being said, it's stressful. You'd like to be in a position that, Elise was in, where she was clear and above the number 1 rider. She went into the Worlds knowing that even if she didn't race, she already was on the team. Whereas, the boys had to battle not only with each other, but with the other countries. And there was just a whole lot of stress. So I would say that oftentimes, once you get that position of I've made the Olympics, it's almost a relief.
Yeah.
And then you can just focus on the race. I had 3 very different experiences. I won the points in 2020. I had the coach's pick in 2016, and I won the trials in 2012. So I did the whole range. But it was always a relief when you could hear those words. You've made it. Now you can just focus on the Olympics.
Right. Definitely. And it seemed like this cycle was a little interesting because Olympic points continued after the World Championships. We had Nashville and the European Championships. What has that happened before? We were looking back, we thought it always ended at the World Championships.
Yeah, I don't know. Luckily, at least when I was competing, we didn't ever have a close country battle to determine positions. I think we were the number 1 nation in 12. We were the number 1 nation in 16. And then 2020, I think we were number 3. So we were always pretty clear of if we were going to get 3 spots or 2 spots in 2020. This is the first time I can remember the men, ever having to deal with that. The women did in 2008 with Ariel Martin and Jill Kintner. The women did, and it came down to the Worlds. But like you're saying, it was the very last event. So there's nothing afterwards. You knew on that day. So, I don't know if it's ever happened before, but I couldn't imagine how Cam Larson, I actually spoke to Cam a couple of days ago, interviewing him, just kind of seeing where he's at, for the broadcast. And I was talking to him. I said, "Where did you watch the European Championships from?" He said, "I was on my couch." I was like, "Did you have the piece of paper next to you with all the points and the calculations?"
Right.
He said, "Yeah." And I said to him, because I've experienced this as well. But I said to him, I said, "How anticlimactic is it to realize that you've made the Olympics from your couch?"
Right.
So we were kind of having a laugh about that. But yeah, it all ended okay for us, for America anyway. I do. Quillen's a nice guy, and Ross Cullen's a nice guy, so you do feel for them. But that's elite sport. That's the Olympics, and it's not. There's not a nice way to put it, but it's cutthroat. You don't get. It's not a privilege, or sorry, it's not a right to compete. It's a privilege to compete, and that's how it goes. When you leave in Paris, there's going to be 3 people that are over the moon. And then there's going to be, 20, 21, a couple people are just going to be happy to be there, right? They know they have no chance, but there's going to be around 20 athletes that are going to be heartbroken. And that's the risk that you take.
Definitely. Yeah. Watching, Quillen and Ross were in Nashville, one of the last C1s or HCs of the cycle. And it was that weird mix of, man, it's awesome to see these guys again. It's awesome to talk to them and, shoot the shit. But then the gate slams down. It's like, man, I want these guys to just be off the back of the pack, blow a pedal, do something.
1776.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of it though. Somebody had to be the first country that wasn't going to get to, and then there's amazing stories. It's part of the Olympics. There's amazing stories of people that, you're so proud of for getting there. But then at the same time, you've got the heartbreaking stories like Ryan Tugis. I mean, Ryan from Canada, he made the semis at the Worlds. He rode out of his mind, the best I've ever seen him perform. And he was the first country that didn't get a spot.
Yeah.
There was, I believe it was the Chilean rider made the main. And, had Ryan beaten that Chilean rider, he would have been on the gate in Paris. And it's heartbreaking because they all deserve it. They all work hard. Every athlete goes through trials and tribulations, but they have to draw a line somewhere. And that's just how it goes.
Yeah, that 24 rider number, it fills up pretty quick. And when you look through the list, it's heavy hitter after heavy hitter. There's the term, it's the hardest small race in the world. The biggest small race. There's not a lot of people, but they are those heavy hitters that are consistently putting in those scores.
Yeah, and here's the thing, sure, you can argue that it's not the most stacked race when it comes to depth. Right. You can argue that, like, that there's not like the 4th best or 6th best French rider or the Jeremy Smith, or Corbin Schrar, guys like that who can get in the mix. However, the riders in the main are the same riders that would be in the main everywhere.
Yeah.
You don't get random people winning the Olympics. I mean, look who's won in the past. Mariana, she's won everything, right? Or you've got Maris. He's won everything. Neat Kimmett, he's won everything, right? Like, it's not random people who get there and do it. I understand the argument, in the motos, there might be a couple riders that wouldn't typically make a quarterfinal. But once you get to the semis and the mains, it's as stacked as it gets.
Right. I mean, Justin Wall's making that main for sure if he's given the option. That's all I'm saying. Well, you talking about the gold medalists. We have some returning medalists for this games. Obviously, unfortunately, Neat Kimmett is out due to injury, due to medical, discoveries. We knew he wasn't feeling the best during the World Championships. We are thankful that he figured out what was wrong, so we can start healing and getting better for the next games. You think Neek's coming back for 28?
Well, I mean, first off, just for the rest of his life, right? But then, secondly, I reached out to him, and my heart goes out to him, obviously. And it's, there's not very many people that can have that conversation and truly say, I know what you feel like. But, I didn't get a chance to fully defend my gold medal either. Yeah. I didn't get to race the main. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, look, if you ever want to get a cup of coffee or just chat, and, I'm here, like, I understand what you've been through. And even if you just want me to listen, like, I'll listen. But he had a good perspective on it, at least from what he said to me. And I think he plans on continuing on, assuming everything gets sorted out. And what an amazing story that would be. Obviously, you don't want that for him, but what an amazing story that would be if he could come back and reclaim his gold medal in the future. Like, that'd be, one of the greatest comeback stories ever. But I think, this is also, I was telling the NBC broadcast about this in some pre-production meetings. This is the first time since Beijing that the defending Olympic gold medalist is not competing.
Yeah.
So there will be a new first-time Olympic gold medalist, which, there wasn't always that guarantee. So all the riders, all the men that are lined up, they all know that, right? And they all understand that one of these 24 athletes is going to be the Olympic champion. And, that does definitely affect the mentality of some riders when you take the defending champion out.
Do you think that opens it up for them, mentally, like, okay, just go that, 5% harder? Or does it kind of reserve it the opposite way of like, okay, the defending guy's not there, I'm just going to stay consistent, do my thing, and try to just do it with that 100%, not that 110?
I think what you're going for is the second thing you said, which is you're just trying to focus on yourself. You're trying to do what you do. But with that being said, Neek being out in lane 8, like when you're in the gate in a main event and Neek's out in 8, he's coming over. You know what I mean? And so when that is no longer there, when that's not in the gate next to you, you're aware that it's not there, And I think the same guys are going to be the favorites. I think, you could put Joris up there. You put Sylvan up there. Isaac, assuming he's back to full form from his injury. Both Cams are kind of wild cards, right? You could tell me that they're in the mix. You could tell me that they go out in semis, and both of those, you've seen it both, right?
Yeah.
They could win. They could go out in semis. All of the riders that have a shot, Romain, I can't not mention Romain, Mayu as well. They're just doing what they do. But like I said, come main event time, they're in lane 6 and they know that lane 8's not coming over. It's definitely a bit of a relief. Right.
Definitely. Well, other returning medalists are obviously Bethany, the defending women's gold medalist, Kai White also from Great Britain on the silver, and then Mariana and Carlos coming in for those bronze medal spots. Is this the year that Carlos gets past the bottom step of the podium and gets maybe a silver or gold?
So I think, going through those medalists, the first thing that they all have is the advantage of experience, and not only experience, positive experience. They've done it, right? So I think that's a huge boost for them. Carlos, both in Rio and in Tokyo, you wouldn't have predicted him to get a bronze before. Just think recently in 2021 in Tokyo, you could think of, and just off the top of my head, Joris, myself, David Graff, Anthony Dean, like there's a few riders that you would have put as a favorite above him. However, that is the Olympics.
Yeah.
You just don't know what to expect. Anything can happen. Going back to 2016, Maris, Liam, Joris, Nick, Corbin, like all these riders were winning races on the lead up. And most of those riders that his name didn't even make the main. So you just never know what's going to happen. Carlos is kind of the king of putting himself in good positions. He gets thirds and fourths all day. And then before you know it, he's in the main event, goes low on the first turn, and now he's in third. And he's made an incredible career out of being a great racer. And he's probably not on very many people's predictions of landing on the podium, but it would not be a surprise at all if he lands on the podium. He's also done it. He's got consistency with it. Him and Mariana have one thing in common, and that's they've never left the Olympics without hardware.
That's a good stat to have.
You know what I mean? So, and Mariana's worst race is second. Her average finish at the Olympics is like 1.3. So, I think you'd be silly not to think that they're going to contend.
Definitely.
They'll probably be the most calm out of everybody, when they're there. But with that being said, it is the Olympics. So you just never know. You could tell me Mariana wins and I wouldn't be surprised. You could tell me she doesn't make the main and I also wouldn't be surprised. It's the Olympics. Anything can happen. And then on the British side, Kai White is a phenomenal bike rider. Unfortunately, I don't think that this track plays to his strengths the same way that Tokyo might have, or some of the other more technical, difficult tracks did. But he's still going to bring it, and he's still going to be a contender for sure. I know he's over in Germany right now, and he's training with Isaac, and they're doing some stuff out of Germany, and from what I hear, he is performing well and going fast. And he's an incredible rider, and you can't ever not include him as a favorite. And Bethany as well. I mean, she's next level. I mean, she is phenomenal as a rider, and she clearly has a winning pedigree, multiple world championships, the Olympics. I mean, she knows how to win, and she knows how to win the big one under pressure. So although the Worlds didn't go how she would have liked, she's going to enter the Olympics, in my opinion, as one of the favorites for sure. I also think, and it's worth mentioning, Rock Hill is one of the easiest tracks, the least technical tracks that the riders raced on through this Olympic cycle. So that plays into certain rider strengths, and it also kind of eliminates the strengths of other riders such as Kai and Beth, who are so talented and such great bike riders. They want the track to be as steep, gnarly, and technical as you could possibly get it. And so, they're gonna benefit from a different type of track than Rock Hill.
Definitely. Yeah, I think the Beth is actually coming in similar to how she came into Tokyo for her gold medal. She just put out on social media that she came in 4 months out, dislocated shoulder, had to do rehab and get ready for the Tokyo Games World. She unfortunately broke her collarbone, went through surgery, and is on the mend and back for Paris. So same kind of lead up for her to defend her title, going through PT, focusing on strength, mobility, and gearing up for Paris. Now, Connor, we know you've had your injuries. We know even before Tokyo, wrist, you name it. How does that PT and kind of physical therapy grind help you as a rider instead of harm you?
Well, what I think it does is it simplifies everything, and it gives you something to kind of lock in and focus on. And when you're injured, even when the Olympics aren't coming up, when you're injured, it truly makes you take things one day at a time, because you're just trying to get a little bit better each day. And so it kind of forces you into that practice of taking it day by day, week by week, and just thinking, about what's in front of you and not about what's coming down the road. So it can be a little bit of a stress reliever, and give you some stuff to focus on, keep you present, which is going to help. And, for her, she's done this before, so I think that it's not going to be something that would throw her off. For a lot of athletes who have not dealt with major injuries before, if they have their first big injury right before the Olympics, they don't know how to handle it because they haven't done it. But luckily for her, she's not going to have to deal with that. But another athlete who's going to have to deal with that is Isaac, right? Yeah. Isaac got a World Cup champion at the end of the season in Tulsa, second there, very consistent, was entering the Worlds as clearly one of the favorites. And he was kind of finding his stride. And then he broke his wrist, right? And that was a whole whirlwind. We were there in the X-ray facility that was there at the track. I picked up the phone. I called Dog V, over in Colorado. He did my wrist. He's done a lot of the motocross guys, Ken Roxon, Hayden Deegan, a bunch of those guys. But he did mine 3-4 months before the Olympics in Rio. Isaac broke the exact same bone, so, me and Isaac, and within under 24 hours, 20 hours later, Isaac was on the operating table in Colorado. Yeah. While the races were going on in Rock Hill, he was already getting fixed up.
It pays to know people, huh?
Yeah. Well, this is one of those ones where I wish I didn't know him, but it all worked out. But Isaac had to take 5 weeks off, and he's already riding again. He's back feeling good. But like I've told him, it's been done before. This is part of the script. It's been done before. But with that being said, though, everybody's dealt with injuries. Everybody's dealt with challenges. Doris broke his collarbone earlier this year, came back, won the world championships. Right. Elise has had her share of injuries over her career. Cam Larson too. It's something that's just part of the game. It's part of being a professional BMX racer. But on the day in Paris, whether or not a certain muscle or bone is sore, it doesn't say that on your gold medal if you win. So you just got to go.
No, it does not. Well, speaking of on the day they're going to be under that roof in France. From your perspective, what does the track look like, in your eyes? If you were going in for your Olympic racing, what would you kind of focus on leading up to it?
Well, this will be the 5th edition of BMX racing at the Olympics, and this is by far the smallest track. Just in terms of footprint, how long it's going to be, how wide it is the smallest one. It's not a super small track in general. I would say it's a little small, but it's not tiny in general. Not like, world championships in 12, 13, 14 that were indoors that were tiny tracks. It's not like that. But what it's going to be, in my opinion, is it's going to be all about that first straight. Whereas Tokyo was a 40-second lap, and those straights were so long, that if you came out of the first turn in second or third, like the race was very much not over. I think passing is going to be limited on this track. But what I think is also going to happen is because it's smaller, it's tighter, it's shorter, it's going to keep the race very compact. Everybody's going to be close. There's not going to be a lot of separation. I hope I'm wrong on this, but I think that's going to lead to some tangling up in some of the turns because there's going to be a lot of riders that are going to be very close together. I think that for the women, there is some technicality in the last 2 straights particularly. So I think that there is going to be an emphasis that they're going to need to put on being smooth and not making mistakes on those straightaways. They've had the benefit of having access to the track, which is new. It's the first time that's happened. And I assume, I wasn't there, but I assume that a lot of the women would have been just absolutely sessioning the 3rd and 4th straight, just lining that up.
Yeah.
Because not only do they want to be smooth, but lap times are going to come into play because inside's going to be, pivotal. So I think the racing is going to be tight. It's going to be a lot of action, particularly in the first turn. And I think that it's going to be a race where, inside is going to be very, very helpful. Not saying you can't do it from the middle or the outside, but more so than ever before, the inside is going to be key. One simple fact that's really easy to look at. This is the first Olympic track that only has 2 obstacles on the first straight, not 3. Every other one had 3. So it's a lot shorter of a first straight.
Definitely. Yeah. And we saw, it's a very similar layout to Tulsa. Right hand first turn, and then for the ladies, you have to cut right, go on that women's side for the second straight. With it being an inside pro straightaway instead of the outside like Tulsa was, are you expecting to see a lot of especially the women hung up on the outside of that first turn trying to get down into that right side of the second straight?
Oh yeah, I think that's definitely going to play a factor. Also talk about that right hand first turn. This is the first Olympic track with a right hand first turn.
Oh wow, I just put that together. Yeah.
I don't know why, but for whatever reason, it seems like the majority of supercross tracks are left hands. Even here in America, think about it. Louisville is a left-hander, Oldsmar is a left-hander, Sarasota is a left-hander. I think Houston's a right-hander. Both Chulas are left-hander. Rock Hill. The vast majority of supercross tracks, for whatever reason, have been left-hand first turns. So this is the first right-hander. I don't think that matters. I don't think that changes anything, just kind of an interesting stat. But what you're talking about is definitely going to be a factor because there's going to be, the race typically goes into the inside in the lane 1. Somebody's going to have to, cut over as far as they can to get in front of somebody if they're on the inside. Or the rider in lane 1 might push out, but they're not going to push out further than maybe 2 or 3 because they don't want to leave room for somebody to go under them.
Right.
With that being said, though, they're going to have to cut back after the first turn. So, if you come out, let's say Elise as an example, let's say Elise is in 4 and she has one of her patented, incredible starts, gets out, cuts everybody off and enters the first turn as tight as you can. She now has to make a very tight turn to get back over to that inside of that straightaway. Another rider might be able to swing a little wide, carry more momentum, and then enter the second straight with more momentum. But if Elise doesn't cut over all the way and leave some room on the inside with the plans of keeping her momentum up, she opens up to somebody going underneath her. So that's where the game of chess really comes in more so than it would if there wasn't a cut down out of the first turn for the women. They have to be thinking, both offensively and defensively. Whereas, for the men, they can enter the first turn on the far inside and then exit on the far outside and kind of counteract that. So yeah, it's gonna add a whole nother layer, something new to watch. I think you did see the most recent Olympics that had it was Rio. You did see some first turn action. You know, Caroline Buchanan, who was one of the favorites at the time, had some issues in the first turn with riders cutting down, and it did cause and create a lot of action. So that'll be a point to watch.
Yeah, I'm excited. What we haven't seen on social throughout, you know, people flying to Paris and getting time on the track is that last straightaway. We haven't really seen any video from that last straight other than the testing event or the test event earlier this year. Take us through what you see on that last straight. What obstacles are gonna test the rider's limits? I think there's that, it's like downslope.
The unique up tabletop thing.
Yeah, it's an on-off section for motocross, but on a BMX bike, it might be a little tricky for some of these guys.
Yeah, well, you know, no suspension in motor definitely doesn't make it as easy. No, well, first off, I love it. Like, I think it's great. I think that, you know, throwing some curveballs at the riders is great and not just doing the same thing all the time. This is a great example and a great time to do it because you did have a test event. And if it didn't work, they could go and change it. You know, you wouldn't want to do that as an example. You wouldn't want to do that for the very first time at the Grands when there's no time to change it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if you do it, you know, at an event like this, and then they race and it doesn't work, you've got time to change it. What I see on the last straight and the third straight is there's more than one option of how you want to get through it. So step one would be figure out what your line is. And you're going to try to figure out what can I do all day consistently, right? There might be a line that's a little bit quicker, but you might only nail it 50% of the time. And so what I would always say when I'm coaching riders is what can you do consistently all day? And what do you feel comfortable doing that if you're in the lead, you feel good about doing it? Right. You know, if you've got that 50-50 line, maybe it's a huge triple, maybe it's a double manual, something like that. You're winning the Olympics. Do you want to pull that out of the back pocket when you're in front in the Olympics? You know? Right. So I think step one will be figuring out your line. What can you do all day? And that's consistent and that's fast. But then the thing that's going to really come into play, I believe, is that's the last straight. So when you're on the fourth lap and you only have 15, 20 minutes between your laps and your heart rate's pinned, your legs are tired, and you've got to hit this gnarly rhythm section, you know, can you do it consistently? Are you fit? Have you been doing your laps? Have you been doing your training? I think that's going to be a factor as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that 4 laps each day is going to be interesting to watch because obviously, like, you know, 4 laps, thinking about it, that's one race day on the USA BMX series. Total point 3 rounds. You know, you even have some semis and then a main usually. But with that added Olympic adrenaline, I'm sure those legs get tired out way faster than when you're at, you know, when you were at Houston doing the 50 feet extra after the finish line. I'm sure those laps didn't feel as hard as the laps in Tokyo.
Yeah, there's a couple things to think about. So one of the main differences between the USA BMX series and World Cups or Olympics is you do gate picks off of lap time at the Olympics at a World Cup versus in USA BMX, your gate pick is based on your moto finish. So if you're out in front, you take a peek back in the last turn, you got a few bike lengths, you can kind of let off the gas in the last straight a little bit. Whereas at the Olympics and at a World Cup, World Championships, you will see every rider sprinting to the finish line, lunging to the finish line in Moto 1 for a 1/10 of a second, because you know that 1/10 could be the difference between gate 1 and gate 3, and especially this time around that they are scrambling motos, which they've never done before. People are going to be doing everything they can for that gate pick, and then like I mentioned earlier, gate pick's even more important than it ever has been before. So from a physical point of view, you're going to be completely pinned every lap all day long. With that being said, too, you have the minimum amount of time possible because this is a TV broadcast event, and they don't want to have all this dead time in between laps. So I think UCI minimum, it's changed over the years, but I think it might be like 18 minutes between gate drops or something like that. Yeah. So they will be on the nose on 18 minutes. So the moment you cross the finish line, your heart rate spiked, you're out of breath. That time starts, and your immediate number one goal is to get your heart rate down, to recover and to rest before the next lap. Sure, the gate might not go down for 18 minutes, but after 10 minutes, you stage.
Yeah.
You pick your gate, you start walking up the starting hill, right? So there's plenty of times I can remember at the World Championships, Olympics, things like that, when you're at the bottom of the starting hill, picking your starting gate, you're still out of breath, but you got to remind yourself, I still got 5 minutes before we go.
Right.
Take a breath. It's part of it, but I think that, that's going to be a factor. It's the adrenaline is a huge piece too, because all these riders can go and bust 4 laps full gas easily. You've been training, they've been ticking every box, doing the diet, doing the stretching, doing everything they possibly can. So 4 laps, no big deal. 4 laps when the lights are on and it's the Olympics and you got the big NBC camera right in front of you, and the whole country's rooting for you, and what's on the line. It's the biggest bonuses. It is legacy. It is, depending on your country, you can completely change the fortune of your life and your family's life. Maris come to mind, like first gold medalist from their country ever. Yeah. That's a lot to have on your shoulders for those 4 laps. And that's why the racing's always so incredible.
Definitely. Yeah. So that Olympic format, it's like you were saying, the quarterfinals to start off with scrambled motos into an LCQ. That's day 1. Day 2, semi-mains into that 1 lap, no crap main event. With that format, who are your favorites?
I think, you have to look at I look at history to pull my favorites. In the Olympics, it's never been a random person to win. It's never been somebody's first major win. Everybody who's won has always had titles and major wins before, right? Maris, obviously, multiple world championships before he won, World Cup titles. When I won the World Cup title, multiple World Cups, USA BMX races. Like, it wasn't my first major win. Neek, world champion, 2015, World Cup champion, 18-19. Like, you're unlikely, not saying it can't be done, but unlikely that somebody pulls the trigger for their first time in the biggest moment.
Right.
So with that being said, I think first and foremost, you have to look at the home team. They all have buckets of medals and experience, right? Joris, the only and the first 4-time Olympian in BMX racing. Arguably, statistically, results-wise, you could make a very, very good argument that he's the GOAT. But he's missing one thing on his list, right? And so for him, he's done it all except this. So he knows how to win. He knows how to win better than anybody. I think that he has to be top of the list of the favorites. But for whatever reason, he hasn't been able to kind of translate those wins on World Cups, USA BMX, World Championships. He hasn't been able to convert them in the Olympics. So that's the big question mark on him, is can he get it right? Right. And he's got all the pressure on him. He's the home country. He's the world champion. It's most likely his last chance. He's got all that pressure, but Joris has no problem with pressure. Yeah. So I think he's got to be your favorite, top of that list. And then, right there, the rest of the French, Romain, world champion, 2023. Bad luck this year at the World Championships, but he was flying. And with that being said too, and then even with Sylvain, who got bronze at the World Championships, World Cup champion, won the World Championships. He's, again, multiple-time winner at major events. The one thing that all 3 of those riders have in common that I think is a huge factor, they were all in the main event in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Now, none of them medaled, and I will take this because I think this might be one of the last times that we can say it. The French have never medaled in men's BMX racing. But I do believe this will be the last time that we could say that. But 3 French men in the finals in Tokyo, none of them medaled. Like, you would never have imagined that before. Joris is in lane 1. Romain's been flying all day. There's only 7 guys racing because I'm out. Like, how did they not medal? But one interesting fact that I think is worth mentioning, outside of Beijing, where nobody had raced the Olympics before, every Olympic gold medalist in the men's was in the Olympics before.
Yeah.
So Maris won in 8 and he won again in 12. I was in the main in 12, didn't win, won in 16. Neek was in the main in 16, didn't medal, won in 20. Right. All 3 of the French were in the main in Tokyo. So they have that experience. This will not be their first time doing that. And I think that is invaluable. Outside of the French, I think World Cup champion Isaac Kennedy, obviously he had the injury. I think without the injury, there's a very good chance he'd have been, in the mix of the World Championships, in the main, on the podium, potentially winning. He'd be higher on everybody's list, but I think just he missed 5 weeks of riding, and in those 5 weeks he was in the gym. So I think that he's definitely still going to be one of the favorites. I think the Colombian team, they know how to get it done, whether it's Diego Arboleda. He's won World Cups before. Carlos has multiple medals. You can't not mention them. The Americans, both of them have had inconsistent results, but that does include some good results. Yeah. Cam's won World Cups, and by Cam I mean Wood, because they're both Cam. Wood's won World Cups, and he was in the main in Tulsa both days, right? Larson was in the main in Tulsa and on the podium in Tulsa. So they've both done it. They've both shown that they can do it. So there would be no surprise if they do it again. What they're going to need to sort out in Paris, as well as moving forward in their careers, is how to gain that consistency that a Nick or a Joris or a Romain has, where they're in the main every single time. They're winning consistently, and it's not as much of a roller coaster. But with age and experience, that should come naturally. They're both young.
Right.
With that being said, Alfredo Campo. He was in the main in Tokyo, right? I mean, he's one of the fast. He was I think he was in lane 2 at the World Championships.
Yeah.
He's fast. He's experienced. This is his 3rd Olympics. He's going to be ready to go as well. I think that Rico Bierman is 1 Olympics away. I think this will be kind of an experience games for him. He's fast. He got 6th at the World Championships, but he's young. I think for him, he's definitely going to be a favorite come LA.
This is his 2012. This is his 2012. We're gearing up for 2016, right?
yeah, that kind of thing. But, with that being said, it's the Olympics, and all it takes is one good day. If you wake up on the right side of the bed and go, he's got the speed in him to get that done. Kai White, a defending silver medalist, he knows how to win races. He's won World Cups, podium World Cups. I think he won one earlier this year in Australia, so you can't count him out. I mean, and that right there is too many guys that I mentioned to even all make the main. Right. Which is what makes this so fun. And I don't have a list in front of me, so I might miss some of the favorites. The Swiss, they come to mind. World champion 2022 with Simon. Cedric Booty, who was leading World Cup points this year, crashed with Wood at the Worlds. He was in lane 1 in a quarterfinal. That's no joke. He's at speed. So, yeah, I got my popcorn ready.
Definitely. I'm glad you brought up Cedric Booty, because I do think especially here stateside, we don't give him the credit due of what he can put, speed wise on the track. Even listening to some of the US fans watching the motos, they were like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Is that Simon? No, that's Cedric.
Booty won the World Championships in Rock Hill 2017, junior world champion.
Exactly.
He beat Kai. He beat Isaac. He beat all those guys that he's still racing against for a world title in 2017. The Swiss have really been picking it up in the past 5-10 years, starting with David Graf and Renaud Blanc, have really elevated and pushed that program forward, and he's no joke at all. And there'd be no shock to see him in the main in Tokyo. And once you're in the main, it's free for all. Anything can happen.
Right. Definitely.
I also think we didn't touch on the women and the favorites for the women. I think first off, I cannot begin this conversation without saying Mariana Payon, the undisputed GOAT female BMX racer of all time. She went to 3 Olympics, gold, silver. I mean, come on. And then every time you see her, she's just got a smile ear to ear, and she's the nicest person. She knows what she's doing. With that being said, all of the competition that she has also knows what they're doing. Elise has won a silver medal. She's her 4th Olympic. She's the world champion. She knows how to handle a big moment. This track, I believe, plays into her strengths. Shorter, not quite as long and technical as some of the other ones, where she can really just crack a big start, get out in front, get to the finish line, which is how she likes to win. Bethany Shriver, she's defending Olympic champion for a reason, world champion for a reason. She's going to be a factor. Felicia, fourth the world championships, world champion 2 years ago. You know, Felicia's one of those riders where if she shows up on the day and she woke up on the right side of the bed, good luck. You know, she just has that level she can get to that not very many other women can. You know, Delaney was just on the podium at the World Championships. Again, this track, I believe, plays into her strengths as well. Start is going to mean a little bit more than even a typical BMX race. She's got a great start. So I think she's going to be a contender. You know, Saya Sakakibara, she's won almost, it seems like every World Cup the last few years. For whatever reason, getting over the hump at the big one has been kind of her kryptonite, whether it's the Worlds or the Olympics. She's had trouble closing the deal at the Worlds or the Olympics. But in my opinion, if you're winning all these World Cups, if you're winning all these races, and you continue to put yourself in position at the big one, you're going to get it one of these times, right? Yeah. You're going to get it. So there would be no shock to see her in lane number 1 in the main event at all. And then it would just be down to her if she can handle the moment and if she can get the job done. But I believe that her time and her big win, whether it's Worlds, Olympics, her big win is coming. You know, I think Zoe, you know, she is one of my favorite riders to watch. She absolutely rips. Again, Swiss. And I think she's going to be a factor. And then, you know, we were doing some pre-production meetings for NBC, and I talked about how the Smolder sisters, they each have a bronze medal, and now they're racing against each other again. You know, so think about, you know, family dinner for the rest of their lives. They're on a tie right now. Who's got the better result? You know, right. and I think Laura has won, I don't even know the number. It's like 20-something World Cups.
I think it's 29, not quite 30 yet.
That's bananas. That's you know, insane. Every day for a month. The whole month of February, she wins a World Cup. I mean, that's right. Absolutely bananas. You know, so I think both of those, the sisters, need to be included in the favorites for sure. You know, I think that again, you can make an argument for so many different riders, and that's part of what makes it fun. I tell you who I don't envy is the bookies who have to set the odds, right? Because you know that's I don't even know how I would start.
Right. Yeah, like you were saying earlier. I mean, there's the crop of riders is so, you know, elevated for the Olympics. Like someone's going to be heartbroken. A fan base is just going to be crushed because their rider got 5th in that semi, or 5th off the points, and it's going to be the best of the best in that final 8 on both sides. So, man, I just can't wait to hear your voice calling it. I'm expecting a voice crack or something when you get too excited. It's going to be great.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. It's fun for me because not only do I know the sport so well, I've been involved in the sport for over 25 years. I raced against nearly all of these riders. And on the women's side, I trained and was around a lot of them. So I know them personally. Yeah. I know their tendencies. I know how they ride. I can kind of see I can almost see what's going to happen before it happens. So I can't wait to share, you know, my love for the sport. I'm biased. I think this is the best sport ever. But I can't wait to share my love for that with all of the United States. And, you know, I'm also going to make sure that I explain that these are the best of the best. This is the pinnacle. You know, your local BMX track is not an 8-meter starting hill. Right. and the analogy I like to make, this is the snowboard super pipe. This is when you watch Shaun White in the half pipe. But if you want to go skiing on the weekend, you're not dropping into a half pipe.
Right.
You know, so just helping the general public understand and hopefully getting some more people out to the BMX track.
That's awesome. Well, we can't wait, man. Safe travels. Are you going to be on site in Paris?
So we're going to be doing it from NBC headquarters in Connecticut. Oh, so awesome. We've been doing a lot of pre-production meetings. There are over 160 total announcers and people involved with the broadcast for the Olympics, and that's a lot of people.
Yeah,
you know, everybody ranging from Peyton Manning to Snoop Dogg to Ryan Sheckler to me, right? Yeah. So I think about 50 of the broadcasters will be over in Paris, and those will be more of the talk show hosts, right? And then kind of the reporters for the big 3, which is swimming, track and field, and gymnastics, which is the big 3 of the Olympics. And then all the commentators for all the other events, which there's a ton when you think about it.
Yeah.
Golf, fencing, badminton, ping pong, rowing, you know, BMX. We'll be doing it from NBC headquarters in Connecticut. And then hopefully the plan is if some of the American athletes medal, win, hopefully, then, we'll get them on live and I'll be able to, potentially interview them and talk them through some of their races after the fact.
Dude, that's going to be an exciting 2 days for 2024. We can't wait to hear on it and see you on that broadcast. But man, Connor, thanks so much for coming in, giving your perspective. Just can't thank you enough, and we're excited to see it.
Absolutely, I appreciate that, and I will say, I'm supposed to be neutral. I'm on the broadcast, but go Team USA.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome, man.
Moving this one, bring him back. KD out, here we go, answer, hold shot.